Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the strategy session. I am your host tonight, Rick Wilson. I am joined, as always, by Joe Trippi, Stuart Stevens, and tonight also joining us, Simon Rosenberg of the Hopium Chronicles on Substack, which I hope you will read. Folks, we had a rough election night, and we're starting to see some of the consequences for the country right now. We have got a selection of cabinet picks from Donald Trump so far, who range from evil to comical to incredibly dangerous. I want to talk to you tonight about these picks, talk to the guys about where they see the political landscape going forward, and to give you some perspective on why fighting these cabinet nominees has now become the new central battlefield for the resistance to Trump's movement. It's going to be an important show. Thank you again for joining us. Before we get started, I hope you'll like and share the show on your social media platforms, wherever you follow us, whether it's on Blue Sky, Says Us, or that place called Twitter, which you may recall was once upon a time a social media network before it became Elon Musk's playground. Anyway, getting the show underway tonight. First off, I want to ask Stuart. Stuart, you and I have been through a lot of Republican political world drama over our long haul. Can you imagine a circumstance where we would have seen candidates like a Tulsi Gabbard or a Matt Gaetz or a Pete Hegseth or any of these other clowns from any serious Republican presidential candidate before the era of Trump Part 2?
Yeah, it's a perfect example of why this stuff we used to say about character counts was true. You start out saying, okay, I can't go with Hillary Clinton, so I'll go with Donald Trump. And you end up with, a sexual predator appointing a sexual predator to be the highest ranking law enforcement official.
Right.
You end up with a de facto Russian agent as in the most sensitive post in the country on national intelligence. And I think the fault is at the party.
Sure.
But once you allow this to happen, how do you get out of it? And I think it's incredibly damning for the party. And I just, I hope that a lot of these people aren't going to get confirmed.
Yeah, I think the problem is a lot of these people are going to get confirmed.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
And Joe, what do you think of the Schumer strategy right now, saying they're going to maintain strategic silence about these nominees?
No, I think that does make sense, because I think what they want to do is, and I think it's what we should want, is force the Republicans to be the people who are saying yay or nay on this stuff. I mean, to not make it just a knee-jerk partisan, they're all bad thing. Literally smoke any possible Republican fight out there, which I think, I mean, the strategy's right. I just don't think there's, I more think it's likely that they'll all be confirmed, including Gaetz, because I could see 2 or 3 Republicans voting against him, but I don't know where the 4th or 5th is. And but then that makes it the Republicans owning it, and I'm not sure that's a bad place to be. Look, I am, as you know, I mean, I think we've got to find a central place and build a central resistance information hub and get as many people in it as possible and build it. But I do think there's some wisdom in letting the Republicans, if there's going to be any Republican resistance in the Senate at all, make it them step out first and then join them. But I don't think I think the misstep there may be that there just isn't any. I mean, you're seeing, the fealty going down to Mar-a-Lago, bending the knee, all that stuff's already starting to happen.
Yeah, for sure. So, Simon, talk to us a little bit about where you see the current nomination fights affecting the political landscape going forward.
I think that I'm so torn by all of this, and I'm listening to what you guys are saying here. And, part of me says publicly all the time that it's always worst case with Trump, right? That he never goes to the middle ground. He never plays it simple. It's always the worst. It's always, damn the torpedoes. He goes all the way. but I also feel like this was a mistake. I feel that, this was a very close election. Trump is going to win by only a point and a half. It was 2 points in 3 battleground states. This was not a landslide or a big mandate. He's going to get under 50. And I think that the fact that he's pushing the Senate so quickly to accept unacceptable things on his behalf is creating I don't and you guys know all these guys better than I do, right? But this is not this has to be seen internally in the Senate as unwelcome. I mean, Mitch McConnell already saying that, recess appointments are off the table, as if Mitch can make that happen. But this is a huge backhand to the Senate and to the Senate leadership who just won their election, who are so, feel strong. And Trump comes and smashes them to the ground and says, accept these ridiculous people. And I think that it's putting the Senate into a place, I'm sure behind the scenes, of a place of where they're really struggling with this. I mean, the idea, if they accept this, then they're essentially becoming a Roman Senate of the empire. They're not becoming an American Senate any longer. They're going to have to accept anything that he says or does, and they're going to have rolled over on things that really matter right away. And because this does matter. I mean, to put it into context, I think that not only do we have a serial criminal and rapist, becoming the attorney general. And we also have, Pete Hegseth, who's is unqualified and kind of a buffoon and a Christian nationalist becoming head of the Defense Department. Tulsi Gabbard is there to destroy the American intelligence community globally. This is not something that there's any way to put lipstick on that pig in terms of the danger. And then Robert Kennedy, who is literally talking about destroying the American public health system and ending vaccines and things that are going to, he wants to actually kill people, right? Like we're talking about ending, these are grave matters. And I think that Republicans are going to have some remorse in signing on to the absurdity and gravity of all this. It may not be enough to us defeat any of them, but it's going to erode the relationship between Trump and the Senate in a way that where Trump, took 2 helpings from the dinner table. He went too far here with his colleagues. And I think this was a huge error, by the way. My own view, it's an error. And I know that people see it differently. But so I think, I'm not sure that the decision to play it safe, and as Schumer said, I think that we on the outside, we need to be loud and we need to be learning how to fight this stuff now in our new formations, our new organizations. Mm-hmm. And certainly at Hopium, I'm encouraging people to call their senators and their House members to let them know that they expect them to get up and do everything they can to block these nominations.
I think that's something we really need to reflect on a little bit, is that this really will come down to, in a really significant way, folks in the outside space, call it the resistance, call it what you will, who understand that we can't rely on the corporate media. We can't rely on the traditional social media platforms that have sort of defined our political world for a long time. This is really going to require individuals and outside groups coming together at a level that we're just not accustomed to for a long time. And I think, whether that means you move off of Twitter or off of Facebook and over to new platforms like Blue Sky, and work to build communications networks and political action networks like we've done at the Lincoln Project and other places. I think that's going to be one of the most essential sort of angles in this fight, because Trump has learned to exploit and break those traditional systems fundamentally. Stu?
Yeah, I mean, it is he is instinctually, I don't think intellectually, because I don't think he's capable of understanding it. He is an authoritarian. He wants to be the only person deciding, which is why he has such admiration for those who can rule their country that way, from Putin to Xi to North Korea. And he has, and the Republican Party has aided and abetted this, systematically been at war with all the institutions of civil society. So in some ways, it resembles sort of the worst of like the SDS in the 60s. And he's attacking the FBI. He attacks the Justice Department. He attacks trial by jury. He attacks elections. And what is the purpose of that? That is to make this a country that is not a rule of law, but a rule of men. And he is going to be that first person, and then he'd like to pass it on. And it's just so fundamentally anti-American. And I just, my greatest worry is it's been so long since Americans have had to defend these basic concepts. So long since we've, literally fought for democracy, that are we just going to sort of sleepwalk through this until it's too late?
Well, look, one of the things that's happened, and I heard this from people who knocked on doors. People were knocking on doors and just had a T-shirts on that just said the one word democracy on it, on the front. And when they knocked on the door, there were people, as soon as they opened the door, screaming at them. I mean, what I'm saying is when you're pro-democracy, that's a partisan label. There's something wrong here. And that's what I think we have to get, that this is not partisan. This is whether you're going to stand up and be citizens and stand against this. And where we form information hubs that are pro-democracy, yes, partisan if they need to be. I mean, the Democrat, as a Democrat, but damn it, in pursuit of all of us standing up again, when they're right, fine. But when they are wrong, when they're doing something with these kind of nominees, taking a direct assault on everything we stand for, we've got to stand up, we've got to resist, and we've got to create the platforms, like Resolute Square, by the way, and Hopium Chronicles, that where we are getting our information out, because right now their propaganda networks are overwhelming the journalists, the mainstream media, overrunning. It's no match for. You can't not knock on doors in October every 2 years and undo the damage they've done to the body politic, and that's going to continue. Particularly, that's what these appointees are really about doing.
Isn't that something? You're right. I was just saying that exactly, Joe. Isn't that something that we can all agree? I think that all of these appointees have been selected very carefully to cause the maximum damage to society, to cause the maximum impact and pain on the people the government is supposed to serve and to govern. Simon, what do you think of that?
Well, Rick, I think that one of the, and by the way, you may hear my dog barking. I apologize. Is that I think that's right, and I think that I wonder. The way I view Trump is that I think a lot of people on the right view what he says as like locker room talk. Right? It's like one big exercise of like, oh, he's kind of crazy, and he doesn't really mean it, right? But we're about to see what he really means. I mean, the tariffs will essentially undo the global economy that's made us prosperous for generations.
Right.
His, attack on Ukraine and his siding with Putin will start to unravel the alliances that have kept us safe. He wants to unravel the public health system in the United States that is central to, by the way, even public schools. I mean, without vaccines, you can't really have public schools. People won't go to the same schools with unvaccinated kids, and people will die here. We have he's authoritarian assault on the Senate already, sort of trying to fundamentally change the nature of our democracy. I mean, this is an all hands on deck moment, right? I mean, we are here now. We didn't know he was going to do this, right? It was likely, you could have surmised, but he still had to do it. His first few appointments actually looked reasonable, and then a switch got turned last Tuesday. I think calls got made to him and to Elon and to others to sort of, hey, wait a minute, you can't play ball with the Republican establishment. You've got to go be the Russian-backed wrecking ball that we want you to be on American society. Right. And so my own view as somebody like you guys who've been doing this forever is that we have to fight here. We don't really have a choice. I mean, this is so scary and worrisome and terrifying. It's worst case scenario. And also I think that he's trying to humiliate the United States all around the world. I mean, this is literally as if his goal is to destroy the country. And then what happens to these Republican senators? I mean, are they really going to go along with this? Are they really going to go along with the tariffs and unraveling the public health system in the United States and ending vaccines here and, letting Russia win and enslave Ukraine and watching mass genocide, happen on our watch? Are the Republican senators really going to do all of this? And I know that we have been waiting for Republican leaders to take the off ramp for Trump for a long time. And we've all been bitterly disappointed in that.
Yeah.
However, I think the stakes here are significantly higher because Trump is far more dangerous, far more diminished and extreme than he was, far more unhinged than he's been in the past. I mean, he is like a dangerous Roman emperor from the past. And, I just wonder how this is really going to go down. And I also will say that the narrow margin in the House and the Senate also gives us a little bit of leverage here, that those people that are going to worry about Trump, taking positions that are wildly at odds with voters in our democracy, that would matter. It may be that they don't think there's going to be elections, so they don't really care anymore. But, he is burning through a lot of stuff really quickly here. And it's why I think that our obligation here for our democracy is to fight this with everything we got, despite being fatigued and, and all the things that we are right now.
Let me ask a question that sounds like a joke, but it's a serious question. If there was a resolution in the House to make January 6th a national holiday, how many Republicans do we think would vote against it?
0. In the House, 0.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 or 5 in the Senate. I mean, that's what
right.
I'm not sure. That's what I think that you can count like to 3 on all those kinds of questions in the Senate. The question is, can you count to 4 or 5? And I'm not passing judgment on that. I agree with Simon that there's much more at stake here, that we have to put as much pressure on them. Actually, Simon, I guess what I would ask your opinion on is who are the 4th or 5th or 6th votes that we should be urging people to.
Can we run the McGovern clip? Can we just run that for a second?
Yeah, let's play that. Folks, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell is going on here? And their cabinet picks so far? I mean, these are like beyond insane. Someone who is credibly accused of having sex with an underage girl. Someone who sucks up to foreign dictators and has attracted major concern that they can't be trusted to protect America's secrets from our adversaries. Someone who paid hush money to cover up a sexual assault accusation, to lead our military. He's picked because Donald Trump likes him on Fox News. Someone who says that tap water turns kids gay. I mean, this is the dream team? This is the dream team? Really? I mean, seriously, it would be if it weren't so sad.
I make one comment about that, and I'll turn it back, is that what I wrote about today on Twitter and Blue Sky is that our leaders now need to understand that they just don't govern and legislate, they communicate. And it is vital now that we use platforms like what Jim McGovern did today to start communicating, with unrelenting vigor every day about what's happening in this country to the American people. We have an obligation. They all have an obligation to do that. And Jim McGovern showed the way today. Every Democratic elected official in the country, not just in Congress, needs to be starting to understand themselves as communicators and to start, responding to this vast right-wing information superiority that they have. And this is going to require us to rethink and relearn how to do this business in a way that Republicans have pioneered. We're way behind on this. Our folks, we govern, we legislate, we give important speeches, we go on ABC News, right? And, they're playing guerrilla war against us all day long, and we don't even know what's happening. And I think that I think that Jim McGovern, I'm really glad we showed that, because we should demand every day from our elected leaders that they are operating in a vein that's similar to what Jim McGovern did today, because the stakes are high, and this kind of accommodationist language we've been hearing a little bit from some congressional Democrats in the last few days has been a little bit unnerving to me, because
I don't want to hear any more of this my
go.
honorable friend shit at this point when the other side is saying they're gonna.
But it's journalism too. I mean, it's all of it.
Oh, yeah.
All the institutional stuff that's out there, that's caving, that's kneeling down. I mean, it's got to be stand up and fight. It's got to be to call on our leaders to step up and take it to them, and we have to do it. If we, particularly Lincoln Project, I think has always been at the tip of that spear. And why it's been such a big deal to me to be working with you guys. But, we have to all run. We're all running at the tip of the spear again. And hopefully there'll be more McGoverns out there that'll start to step up.
Look, I think that that driving up the pain level for members of Congress who understand just how much is at stake is a really vital task for us. And I think we need to make sure that we are expressing to members of Congress in particular on the Republican side that they're about to be called upon to vote on some really dark and unpopular shit. And while they are, many of them in very safe congressional districts, while many of them are very much in the Trump camp, at some point, political gravity starts to affect them because they're not Donald Trump. They're not surrounded by a media shield like in the same way Trump is. And so when they're called upon to vote on things like job-killing tariffs, when they're called upon to vote on things like deportations, I think it's going to be a tougher hump than they think it is. And I think it's important for all of us in this pro-democracy movement to make it as painful as possible for them, to lay it down in a way that really hits them in the face, just what's going to happen, just what's coming down the line if they keep up on this track. I mean, Stuart, off-year elections have often been a product of overreach by the party in power.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we saw that in
2010.
We saw that in 2010.
Yeah.
We saw that, we saw a little bit of that punishment effect in 2006 when Republicans were doing some very unpopular shit.
Yeah.
I think there's a potential out there that Donald Trump's numbers will go down into the same range Biden's were in, just like they were before, in the high 30s, low 40s, and get stuck there. Because Trump is better when he's in opposition. He's better when he's outside of the government. And I think we're going to end up with a chance where on the pro-democracy side, we get to make a real argument that this election will be the actual mandate election. This election will be the actual decision point, because if you take away Trump's power in the fall of 2026, we're going to be a lot better off as he fades further, and as we face up to, this first year will be largely consumed with trying to get his appointees and his crazier programs across the line. The implementation of Project 2025 will take longer, and the sooner we can raise the political cost on that, I think the better.
Yeah, to me, the real issue here that is going to affect the midterms the most, I think, is what are they going to do about these deportations? Because if you actually go out and have thousands of paramilitary law enforcement rounding up brown people, I just think America, and putting them in camps, and they say they're going to do 10 million. So say they do 2 million. I mean, sure. Are Americans really going to like what they're going to see on their television sets? And this guy says, well, we're not going to separate families. We're going to take them all. And how about these Hispanics who voted for Trump because, well, maybe he'd be good for the economy, and they're taking away their father-in-law and their mother-in-law? Is that really? I just don't think it's a sustainable coalition, because if he doesn't do that, then his base goes crazy. It's going to be, I think, really the most telling moment there. and you know that Miller's going to be pushing for it. Musk is going to be pushing for it. So I think it may all blow up over that one promise he's made. Because, this isn't like Mexico's going to pay for the wall. This is something he can actually do. And doesn't have anybody to blame for not getting done.
A sign that they're nervous about this is that Homan is now saying, well, we only are going to prioritize, and Speaker Johnson, we're just going to prioritize criminals for deportation. And I want to just explain how insane that is when they say this, right? In 2013, when the Senate passed a bipartisan immigration bill,
right,
the reason the House Republicans blocked it and didn't support it was because we prioritized the deportation of criminals over everyone else. It has been long the policy of the MAGA wing of the Republican Party to be against the prioritization of criminals. And in fact, Trump did not prioritize criminals when he was in president because they wanted to deport everybody. And so what they're doing is they're telling one thing to their base, which is we're going to deport everybody. And now when they go on television and speak to other voters, they're lying. I mean, they're just bald-faced lying, because what they're going to do is they're going to scare. What they want is they want what's called self-deportation. What they want to do is to scare undocumented immigrants so that they leave and self-deport, so they don't actually have to build the camps. And that's why there's going to be this loud rattling all the time with Trump, where he's going to try to send signals that people need to go. But just the hypocrisy and the lying that we're already seeing in the last few days has been staggering. Joe Biden, it's been the policy of the Democratic Party to deport criminals first and to use the limited resources we have to remove the most dangerous people. All these same people have opposed that for the last 20 years, right? Correct. And so the idea that this is now their position, I mean, fuck that. It's just the most ridiculous thing in the whole world. But they know from their polling and from what's happening with Hispanics that they're stepping into something really complicated here. And remember, in the 2006 midterms, when we ran up the score in the midterms, and you saw these demonstrations from Hispanics all across the country, it was about Republicans passing a bill that called for the arrest, deportation, and felonization of all the undocumented immigrants in the country. Yep. And so I think Stuart's right. I mean, I think this is one of those issues that plays really well with their base, but when it goes into the bigger electorate, it gets much more complicated for them. And I think what they don't want is the camps, and they're going to do isolated raids, right? But I think, if I can say one last thing, the real test is going to be what happens in Texas. Does Governor Abbott welcome the troops in to go raid his own state, raid his workforce, raid agricultural parts of Texas, destroy the rural economy of Texas? Or is there going to be, this is going to be the canary in the coal mine for me. This is going to be the real test, because these other states are Democratic states. Texas, they can do whatever they want. So I'm assuming that Governor Abbott is welcoming the importing of, thousands of federal troops to come in and clean up and bring all these undocumented immigrants out of the country.
Florida too.
And in Florida right now, I know there was a conversation just recently with Ron DeSantis by some very serious lobbyists from the construction industry who have given him enormous, absurd sums of money, and their basic question to him was, you do know how badly you're going to screw us, right? You do know how badly this hurts us if you begin cooperating with mass deportation. And on his part, DeSantis is like, I will do what the great leader says. But none of the rubber here has hit the road for any of these groups yet. Nobody's really felt the actual pain that is possible when we start breaking up the fact that farm workers and domestic labor and all these folks who are wired deeply into our economy, when that starts hitting, there is going to be a shock and awe effect in this economy. And you want to drive up prices, you want to drive up grocery prices. There's no better way than to allow Trump to do this.
Yeah, I mean, if he does these tariffs, like he says, if you're going to walk into Walmart, I don't see how things aren't going to be 50% more expensive. I mean, and one of the things I think in this overall picture if this stuff really happens, it seems to me it's going to accelerate this divide between those who are more educated and those who are less educated. Because the ones who are less educated are going to listen to RFK, and they're going to die more. And their kids, if you look at the studies on kids that have fluoridated water and those that don't, and the lifelong problems that they have where they don't. So you're going to create increasing underclass of people who are less healthy, and that's going to reduce their ability to be economic advancement the rest of their lives.
Sure.
You're going to have these people who are shopping at Walmart and are living paycheck to paycheck, who are going to have to pay a lot more for these things if they really do these tariffs. Because, is Walmart going to absorb these costs? I don't think so. So it's we get a lot of grief saying, you're doing this because you're afraid of what's going to happen to you. It's not what's going to happen to us. I mean, all of us are going to be fine. It's what's going to happen to the country and what's going to happen to those people who don't realize that they're as vulnerable as they are. Maybe they have some sense of vulnerability, and voting for Trump makes them feel strong and defended. But if he does this stuff, it's not going to happen.
I think the potential for a devastating political blowback on Trump here, that as much as the Republicans have had this drumbeat that the economy is a disaster, the world is on fire, only Trump can save them, I suspect there will be a moment when even his most ardent fans have to say, well, wait a minute, you promised me gas wasn't going to be $4 a gallon. You promised me we were going to end up not having to pay $5 or $6 for a dozen eggs. What's going on? And at some point, it's hard to say the economy is a miracle because of Trump, and then have all the same indicators and all the same problems that his followers have said are these essential things to resolve, because he's not going to resolve them.
Right. And that's the enormous opportunity I see. I mean, too many are sort of like waiting back to see what's going to, maybe he'll moderate, maybe he'll do. No, right now, the enormous opportunity is to start and build a resistance, and for leadership out there in our party, like McGovern, et cetera, to take it to them and start to really amp up make it clear and get the truth out there. And they're not going to believe the truth for a while, but they're going to start seeing it. And we have to get in front of it. We have to really build the information loudness to work against their insidious, poisonous, just propaganda machines. And we've got to be, I agree with Simon, loud and strong, and view this as enormous opportunity to get the American people engaged as part of standing up for democracy. And that's not partisan, to stand up for democracy. And when they say, that's what I'm saying, when they try to make that a partisan thing, oh, you crazy people saying democracy's at stake, it is. Because of these crazy appointments, because of those kids that are going to die, because of the fluoride not being in the water, because of all this crap that they are going to do, including dismantling the regulations, dismantling the EPA, wrecking the Department of Defense, the FBI, our intelligence agencies. No, that's what's at stake here. We have to be loud, and we have to create an information hub that distributes our view, our challenge to them,
100%,
and puts the heat on the senators that we think we can move to stand up to stop this. Otherwise, they're all going to keep still bending their knee at Mar-a-Lago and caving.
Right.
Yeah, and Joe, I think going back to your thing, can I just say last thing is that I don't think we know what happens with the opposition. I don't think we can predict now, but what we can predict is that if we don't fight, then nothing will happen, right? And that we have to do what we can, not knowing that the future is uncertain. But what we do know is that if their loudness continues to drown us out, and when they pass things, they have this fantasy about, that there is no opposition. This is why at this current moment, and I'm going to admit I'm a little bit nervous in the way the Democratic Party is responding to this moment, where we're sort of playing wait and see and strategic, whatever the Schumer term is. I mean, I think this is a mistake. I mean, I understand it. I understand the theory, but my instinct is that this is not just about senators. This is about all of us.
Sure.
And 6 million people were part of this campaign. And this 6 million people who left it all on the playing field for their democracy, people are going to have to take breaks and go take care of their family and go get their heads screwed on straight after this election. But there are
100%.
several million people that are ready to go to work, right, to continue to fight for their democracy. Our job, as you pointed out, Joe, is to figure out how to organize ourselves in new ways, in a new moment, in order to be effective and to use the outrageousness of this moment to build this kind of new politics that we need to build. That's why I'm here tonight with you guys, because you're going to be a critical part of this. And I know that I wish, I haven't taken any time off. I will in December. But I feel this great urgency now to not allow this moment to pass without us being hurt, to stand and to be counted at a critical moment in our history.
It is a mission that calls all of us. Well, folks, I want to thank you for tuning in tonight to the strategy session once again. You can listen to Joe Trippi's excellent podcast at That Trippy Show. Catch Maya May's new show, Punching Up. It is funny and sharp, and you will really like it. You can catch me on the LP podcast and on the Enemies List podcast. I took a little break. I'll be back on those starting this next week. And folks, be of good cheer. I know it sucks in a lot of ways. I know we face a lot of really strong headwinds coming up, but this country's worth fighting for, and being in the fight alone, just telling people you won't give up, telling people you're not going to stop, telling people whatever you can do, whether it's working as a volunteer in a local party, whether it's registering voters, whether it's donating whatever you can to whatever group or candidate you feel is going to carry the ball forward, whether it's just keeping engaged on these things and not giving up. That is something that it is vital as a duty of citizenship right now. Look, we have a Thanksgiving holiday coming up. There'll be a lot of hard conversations, but I want you to remember something when you go into those conversations. When you sit down at Thanksgiving dinner next week, you were on the losing side of an election, but you were on the right side of history. Keep that in your heart. Keep fighting. We'll see you again next time.
See you guys. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks.